Okay, so I promised that this video would be short, as we're just going to hit the very first step in factoring quadratic equations, we call trinomials. So this is factoring trinomials. This is a quadratic equation. Quadratic equation is used. Quadratic equations are used to find virtually the location of anything that is in the air that is under the force of gravity. So from a tennis ball to a bullet to a missile to a rocket to you jumping off your diving board and into the pool, or jumping off of a cliff. Quadratic equations are used to explain anything in motion that is under the force of gravity, and so it becomes a very, very important function. So we're going to get there. We're going to get to solving quadratic equations. But the very first step here is finding your factors. And so here you have a list of quadratic equations where you have an x squared, an x, and then a number by itself, in which we call the constant. Now, the first thing that we need to do is find our a, our b, and our c of a quadratic equation. The a will always be the number next to your x squared, always. The b will always be the number next to the x. And the c, which we call the constant, is always the number that is by itself. So if we go ahead and identify our a, b, c here, for the first one, notice that there doesn't seem like there is an a or there's anything there. Since there's an x squared, there has to be an a. So the number that's right in front of here is a 1. So your a is 1. B would be the number next to the x, and c is the number that is by itself. In the second one, a again is 1, but the b this time is 3, and the c is 7. A is 1, b is negative 3, and c is negative 2. In the fourth one, a is 1, b is 5, and c is negative 6. And that is how you find your a, b, and your c, which is the very first step in solving a quadratic function. So now let's go and see how we use a, b, and c to find our factors. So it says here, you need to find two numbers that multiply to give a times c and add together to give the same value as b. Now, here's what I mean. So here's a quadratic function right here, x squared plus 7x plus 6. So I'm going to zoom in here so we see everything. So we have x squared plus 7x plus 6. Now, the very first thing, and what you just did above, is to identify what your a, b, and c are. So our a is 1, our b is 7, and our c is 6. So here's what we do. We go ahead and we multiply our a times our c. So 1 times 6 gives us 6. And then we have our b, which we rewrite down below. So now I have a times c is 6 and b is 7. So the trick to finding your factors is to find two numbers, and that's why we have two blanks here. Two numbers that when multiplied will give you 6. Then those same two numbers multiplied together, added together, will give you your b, which is 7. So they need to multiply to give you your a times c, which is 6. And the same two numbers have to add together to give you 7. So let's say you don't know what multiplies to be 6, because there are going to be some instances where the number is large and you may not know what numbers multiply to be 6 and add to be 7 off the top of your head. So what you may have to do is just first write what multiplies to get 6 in the first place. Well, I have 1 times 6 and 2 times 3. So 1 one of those combinations is going to have to add to be 7. Well, this one seems pretty simple. It's pretty clear that this one right here would add to be 7. So you just write down 1, 6. 1 and 6. And we always check. 1 times 6 is 6, and then 1 plus 6 is 7. And that's it. There's your factors. This is your factors. 1 and 6. Okay. Again, this is just the first step in solving a quadratic function, but it is a very, very, very important first step. So let's try this again on the next problem. So we scroll down. Here is another quadratic equation. Let me zoom out here so we can see everything. We're going to ignore this for now. Don't do this on your paper because you're going to need it later, but I just didn't want you to get distracted by that stuff. So we have a squared plus 3a minus 4. So again, our first step is going to be to identify our a, b, and c. Our a is 1, our b is 3, and our c is negative 4. Again, we multiply a times c, which is negative 4, and our our b, we write again, is 3. Now again, it may not seem apparent. Some of you may be able to do this right in your head, but it may not be apparent at first in your head what would multiply to be negative 4 and also add to be 3. So it may be good advice to just write what multiplies to be 4 in the first place. So I have 1 times 4 and 2 times 2. Now, what's really nice about this is that you can manipulate these equations. You can You can manipulate these numbers so that you can give one of them negative. You can make one of them negative. You can make one of them positive. You can make them both negative or both positive. It doesn't matter. You could change the signs. So if we look at these, I could put a negative here if I wanted to, or I can take it away, or I could make, I can make both of them negative if I want to. I'm just making marks all over the place. So, but you get the picture. So, if you think about it here, what numbers would multiply to be negative 4? Well, and add to be 3. You're probably looking at, well, it's got to be something to do with that one. Is there some way I can make one of them negative maybe, so that it adds to be 3? There is. If you just did 4 and negative 1. 4 times negative 1 is negative 4, and 4 plus a negative 1 is 3. So you found your factors, 4 and negative 1. Now let me just show you why that would not work if you were to flip the negatives around and make one negative, the other one negative. Negative 4 times 1 is negative 4, but negative 4 plus 1 is not 3. It's negative 3. So it doesn't work. It only works one way, and you have to find that way. In this case, it's 4 and negative 1, and that's your factors. That's it, 4 and negative 1. So in the practice, which you go back to Canvas, the practice is a bunch of these problems to practice finding those factors, and you only have to go that far. I'm not asking you to do every single problem, but I'm asking you just to practice a few. Maybe go through and see if you can do some of the harder ones. Maybe just find 4, 5, or 6 or so to do. You don't have to do all of them. If you have any questions, I please ask you to circle them on that worksheet, and then we can go over them in class on Tuesday or Wednesday, depending on when you have me. Okay? That's finding your factors and solving a quadratic function.